Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and boy do I have a replay here for you today from YarosKiborg playing in their VK7201K. I believe this is the first time that I featured this tank on the channel, but boy is this a tank that's making a big comeback inside the game now. I'd say this vehicle is kind of the padder of choice. If you could have any tier 10 vehicle inside the game, a lot of the power players of World of Tanks are picking this one to get their consistent damage kind of big recovery on their account, or just wanting to go in and just club in as much damage as they possibly can. And that's because they've nerfed the Chieftain, they've nerfed the 279E, and so those vehicles, while I still think the 279E is just as good as this vehicle, but in a different kind of way. That one probably has more armor, whereas this one now has the firepower, whereas previously the 279E, before its nerf, was definitely a step up on the VK7201K. This tank is also interesting because now that the Panzer 7 has been buffed, there's so many reasons as to why you might actually want to play the Panzer 7, but people are still choosing to play this one. Now, if the Panzer 7 was as good, if not better than this vehicle, then people who want to just get those big damage games or be able to focus their W&8, of course they're going to pick the Panzer 7 because it's got lower requirements because everybody can get their hands on it. This tank has very sweaty stats, and so you have to play sweaty in it to be competitive if you want to kind of like pad up your statistics on your account. And that's because it's a Clan Wars reward vehicle that's been in the game for a long time. Don't think it's ever been buffed, but today I'm going to highlight why, even though with the Panzer 7 being buffed, that this thing is still a monster. So, armor-wise, this tank is identical to the Panzer 7 apart from one key aspect, and that is the weak point that you see on the side there that unfortunately Yaros, it didn't work out for them. It's much better than on the Panzer 7. The outside armor of the rounded shape that you see on the hull, on the kind of like the way that the turret traverses over the hull there, on this tank is about 10 to 20 millimeters better than the Panzer 7, meaning that this thing ricochets oh so much more when it is side scraping. But Yaros, obviously knowing how this vehicle works out, also shows that you can kind of just expose the lower plate on this vehicle just like you can on the Panzer 7 and be absolutely tremendous. But on this vehicle, it's so much better for side scraping than the Panzer 7, it's crazy. The other thing that this vehicle is different to the Panzer 7 is that the Panzer 7 uses, I think, 128mm. That has, I think it's 560 alpha damage, but really good penetration of 276 now on its standard rounds. This vehicle has pretty poor standard rounds in comparison at only 246, kind of a bit like on the E100, right? But this thing has an ace up its sleeve, and that is the premium rounds. The gold rounds on this tank are monstrous. They have 350 millimeters of penetration, just like on the M60. So the gold rounds on this tank, just like on the 121B as well, when that used to be a Clan Wars reward tank, are designed so that power players can pay lots of credits to be able to pretty much negate most armors. 350 millimeters of heat pen just means that you can kind of go through those thick plates that other tanks could only dream of. Meaning that when you combine that with the 750 alpha damage that this vehicle has, and you're pretty much firing on reload when you're using a bond rammer and you're also using a rammer directive, that even though this vehicle has rather poor base damage per minute of 2,250, when you are firing on reload, you could be up to 7,000 damage in the first 4 minutes of the game. Now, of course, Yaros is a fantastic player. Not everyone could just be able to pick up this vehicle and be able to achieve this. They've got good knowledge of the mechanics of their vehicle, good knowledge of the weak points of the enemy team, and that push play towards the center was just absolutely beautiful. And being able to hit those shells to pressure the first 54 before the second 54 came in to be able to support them means that they just managed to keep the fights as a 1 versus 1. But when you got these 350 millimeter of heat pen rounds, then you can just be so consistent with your shots. The issue with this vehicle is that its aim time is much worse than the Panzer 7 now, the accuracy is much worse, the gun handling is much worse, and this vehicle even has a worse power to weight ratio than the buffed Panzer 7. But when you can just go through the top of a Gonkovica there with like these ridiculous heat rounds, does it even matter? We can see that Yaros is going kind of like for a full firepower / mobility build here, not faffing with a durability device on this vehicle. They want to farm in this kind of a scenario. A lot of people will like to use a durability device on a vehicle like this to be able to keep themselves in it. and the Bond Turbo just providing exceptional backwards and forwards in this vehicle. This thing has a very good reverse speed of 15. With the Bond Turbo, it's going to be up to 19, making this thing kind of like behave more like a faster heavy at least, or even kind of like a medium rather than the super heavy that this vehicle is, as it weighs 120 tons. Really, where the VK and the Panzer 7 and the VK 7201K both do well is when your opponents are just firing regular rounds at you. Only one gold round from the 54, which is what entered this vehicle, and apart from that, regular rounds, you have to pay the gold price to deal with this tank, and you also really have to pay the gold price to deal with the Panzer 7 as well. They're incredible tanks for incredible matchups when you're playing against tier 8s or when you're playing against people who just don't fire gold. If that E100 was, then maybe Yaros would have lost half of their remaining hit points, but they weren't. And so now Yaros, who's using a Bond gun rammer with a premium consumable and a directive here, can be almost certain that they're going to be able to out-reload that E100. And it's kind of like a duel right now of the Clan Wars tank, Clan Wars reward vehicle versus the E100. He tells the Kranvang to fall back there, I guess because he was expecting the E100 was going to go after him. Or is he telling the Kranvang to fall back because they want to be able to farm up and be able to breach now 11,700 damage? Is this just the perfect game? It pretty much is. This is just a power player playing the flavor of the month kind of padding tank, just absolutely crushing it, almost on reload. So we can see that Yaros doesn't want to shoot the RT here. He wants to go for the FE405. He's going to come around the corner with HE, which has 900 alpha, and ooh, doesn't actually manage to pen. Looks like that one must have caught the gun, or caught maybe the off turret there. Doesn't pen, but still does 500 damage. But that's still a damage loss, and now Yaros is in an awkward situation. Luckily, he bounces a regular round from the FE405 there, reloads quick enough to be able to finish them off before the gargantuan 183mm could get their gun round. But now Yaros is actually caught by a K91 PT, up to 12,700 damage in 7.5 minutes. This is just shooting on reload, the perfect flow of the battle. Just making World of Tanks look so easy. But this is not, it's not the kind of tank which just makes everyone incredibly good in it. Quite often, these vehicles, with their poor gun handling, their poor accuracy, as we could see at the start of the battle with a couple of misses, mistakes are punished quite badly. But when Yaros is just such a strong player, now got 13,000 damage, you know, mistakes are few and far between from a pro gamer like Yaros here. They're up to 9 kills, 2 vehicles left on the enemy team. The STR V1030 trying to push for the FV3805 that's left on top of the hill. And Yaros really wants to get this K91. So Yaros tells the STRV to fall back here. I guess that's because he wanted 10 kills. Yaros, look, you're a great player, there's no doubt, but there's no need to tell the STRV to fall back there. Let your friends farm up the shots if they want to manage to. You know, everyone isn't just an actor in your game, no matter how much you seem to want to make people look like it. Still, nevertheless, Yaros picks up 10 kills and definitely make the enemy team look as if they were extras in their blockbuster movie here. 704 hit points left, 13,000 damage and 10 kills. Man, Yaros, you just absolutely crushed my personal damage record in World of Tanks, and you made it look easy at that. But when the vehicle blocks over twice as many hit points than it had, and almost completely negates the enemy team's armor with those whopping 350 heat pen, combine that with Wargaming's really weird decision to just make the weak point on the side of this vehicle not so much of a weak point like it is on the tech tree tank, yeah, you can see why this vehicle is making a huge comeback in World of Tanks. So this was one of the top damage games of all time in one of the most powerful tanks inside the game. 13,361 damage. Those 10 kills managed to give Yaros the Pools medal, Pascucci's medal for dealing with the artillery, Steelwolf for blocking all that damage. And they spent 121,000 credits on ammunition. But when you do this much damage and it looks like you're running some kind of a booster with a clan, you still make 70k even when resupplying all of the consumables at full price. Are there any doubts as to why this thing is not only super powerful with regards to its win ratio, it also is giving a huge win ratio difference to its players, cementing its status still with the Object 279E as both vehicles that could probably still do with a little bit of a nerf. But as we can see with the Panzer 7, which actually has the second best win ratio difference of any of the tier 10 heavies, and it's actually got the second best overall win ratio of any of the tier 10 tech tree heavies, I should say. What this really highlights is that both of these tank designs are super strong in 2024, and if you liked the idea of the gameplay that you saw today, and you don't want to participate in Clan Wars, go get yourself the Panzer 7. That thing is still an absolute monster heavy, and it should be no surprise as to why if you kind of just remove most of the weak point on the side of the vehicle and give it better gold rounds, then very good players are going to do wonderful things with it. So Yaros, congratulations to you on this epic game of World of Tanks. And thanks so much for uploading it onto the What Replays website to show your glory. I thoroughly loved it, which is why I wanted to feature it on YouTube today. And hope all of you loved this video as well. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And if you're watching this video as it goes live on Friday, it's time for the final drop tokens for this August token store. So come along and get them right now. And if you have been collecting them for my Twitch stream, make sure you spend your tokens before the 31st of August, as they will disappear. So really looking forward to seeing you all live right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.